Jeremias, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jim and Matt, as chairs of the APPG. Thank you also to Anna and everyone in the Institute's team. I should also acknowledge that what I'm going to talk to you about is not just my own work, but my own team. So I'm joined by Ashley and Kelly Lyth, Halle van Abrahas, Six Silverman, who's here, and Sang Rakshita. And we've recently published a blueprint on how to think about the regulation of AI in the workplace. Now, normally, when I tell people that I work on the future of work and AI and jobs, the sort of questions I get are all about, are we losing our jobs? But actually, the kind of research we do is not about workers losing their job. That's a sort of panic that comes every time a new technology sort of seems to crop up. Instead, what we're thinking about is managers losing their jobs. And some people initially think, well, that sounds great. My manager gets automated. But actually, when you start delving into the details, it's not quite as straightforward. And so really what we've seen, starting in the gig economy already 5, 6, 10 years ago, but increasingly now across the socioeconomic spectrum, is really the automation of all traditional employer functions, from hiring workers to managing them on a day-to-day basis, all the way through potentially to firing them, either completely substituting human management or at least very significantly augmenting the exercise of these functions. Now, there are some positive aspects to this, for example, in health and safety context, but also, as Anna's already suggested, there's some well-documented problems when we start automating these functions, from bias, from discrimination, all the way through to systems simply not working as advertised. If somebody tells you that they can sell you an algorithm that'll watch a 2-minute video of a candidate and then give you an exact score of their team working capabilities, well, that's what we call snake oil AI. It's essentially a random number generator, and it simply won't be able to do its job. Now, some people then say, well, humans aren't perfect either, right? We've had lots of problems with traditional management. We employment lawyers wouldn't have a job if that weren't the case. So I think from a legal perspective, the key question we're thinking about is, what are the novel challenges? What are the kind of new things we need to think about? What are the regulatory gaps that any kind of new norms would need to address? And through our work, we've really found 3 broad categories of issues, or 3 particular regulatory gaps that in our blueprint we suggest should be filled. Those are privacy harms, those are information asymmetries, and the demise of managerial and human agency. Very quickly, what do we mean by these? Well, in terms of privacy harms, you could say, well, employers have always collected information about their workforce, from CVs and annual assessments through to all sorts of other information that can be gleaned. But with AI, data collection is no longer just about the individual workers. In the literature, this is sometimes referred to as relational privacy harms, i.e., we can use information about all of us here in the room to actually make deductions, inferences about other potentially future workers. So privacy is no longer just an issue about me, myself, but actually about anyone else who could potentially be involved in future work settings, targeting, in a sense, of future workers, whether that's for potentially trade union activity or trying to work out when somebody might get pregnant and sacking them in advance. These are not hypothetical models. That kind of software certainly exists in the market. The second challenge, very closely linked to this, are information asymmetries. Information asymmetries that are driven by the granularity and the constancy of being able to collect information about workers, the monitoring, and then the kind of inferences we can draw about this. Again, this sort of tacit knowledge extraction, or as one of my favorite articles puts it, moving the brain up the chain, really trying to sort of extract little knowledge bits about the worker and then automating them. And perhaps just as important is this demise of human agency. This idea that where traditionally management would have had agency in terms of running the workplace, that is increasingly becoming dissipated into the cloud. So an interesting illustration of this is litigation against, shall we say, a major provider of warehouse and e-commerce solutions in the United States some years ago, where the allegation was that workers had been sacked for trying to form a trade union. The defense the company ran was to say, local management who operates this plant neither understands nor controls the system that fires the workers. Now, on the facts of that case, that was actually a pretty good defense because there was no trade union victimization going on. But take a step back and think about the fact that you're running a plant with, say, 1,000 workers. And as the manager, you neither understand nor have any control over the system that actually sacks the workers. That starts to be quite interesting in terms of this lack of agency. And of course, what the law ultimately seeks to do is condition the exercise of managerial prerogatives. The moment that becomes dissipated in the crowd, we're really looking at quite serious regulatory challenges. So to conclude, what should we do about it? Well, in the blueprint, which I think Anna has circulated and again is also available online, and please get in touch if you'd like to know more, we set out 8 detailed policy options to tackle the 3 challenges we've identified. I haven't got time to go into any detail, but let me give you just a flavour of the 3 kinds of regulatory approaches we're thinking of. First, we call for certain red lines, a very limited list of some things that should just be completely banned. So trying to work out when somebody's going to be pregnant in order to terminate them from employment before that, that is something that should just be absolutely banned. The sort of prediction of the exercise of legal rights, we call for a clear ban on some of the most egregious practices we're thinking about. More fundamentally, we're also calling second for full information rights, both for the individual worker, but crucially also collectively. Because again, for the individual, if they give you all this detailed technical information, you're just going to be overwhelmed by it. So instead, by having collective avenues of information, we could build up expertise and get around some of the information asymmetry. Finally, what we're calling for are meaningful avenues of contestation. There's lots of talk about the human in the loop, this idea that you should ban the automation of certain things. Again, we don't actually subscribe to that, because it turns out that if you force a human in every loop, they just end up being a big rubber stamp. Instead, what we call for is what we call the human before the loop, the human above the loop, and the human after the loop, i.e. to have clear points of contestation after a decision has been taken, before systems are implemented, and also broader impact assessments, which is something that in the recently published special issue, Anna and my colleague Ashlyn Kelly-Lyth have also written about extensively. That's it from me. I think the key take-home message is there is clear positive potential in algorithmic management, in these tools at work, for example, in a health and safety context. But what we need is a very clear regulatory framework to ensure that we have the benefits, but also avoid the perils of algorithmic management. Thank you.